Kenny Pickett and Sam Howell are both benched heading into week 17. Are you holding out hope that either one of these quarterbacks can be dynasty relevant? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Madjuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Madjuk. Check her out on Twitter at Kate Madjuk. Check her workout at Pro Football Focus and Behind the Steel Curtain. And we're actually going to talk about her Steelers a little bit today because Kenny Pickett and Sam Howell, who we'll get to in a second, were both effectively benched going into week 17. Kate, we heard a report last week from Ian Rappaport that Kenny Pickett should be all good to go for week 17. He's been practicing, and yet the Steelers are going with Mason Rudolph. So on today's show, I want to have a conversation about all the other quarterbacks in the 2022 draft, not named Brock Purdy. And if we have any hope for these guys going into the future, let's start with Kenny Pickett. What are your thoughts?
We've got to talk about Kenny Pickett. Marcus, there have been two Pittsburgh Steelers quarterbacks who have scored 20 or more fantasy points dating back to week 1 of the 2022 season. Their names are Mitch Trubisky and Mason Rudolph.
Yeah.
And they posted those performances week 14, week 16. Kenny Pickett has never scored 20 or more fantasy points in how many career starts, Marcus? Like, this is not
23, 24 career starts.
I believe it was 24. And this is like, that's who Kenny Pickett is. He's had one game of, 280 or more yards in a single game. His career high passing yardage total, 327 yards. In that game, he threw for 0 passing touchdowns, 1 interception. So
that was a game against the Bills, right? Was it his first or second start?
It was his first.
They got obliterated.
His first career start, and he got obliterated. That was good for 12 fantasy points. Marcus, the upside that Kenny Pickett has a passer is just not there. I think we've seen very clearly here that Kenny Pickett's role in this offense here is a game manager. So I think rather than discussing the merits of Kenny Pickett and his upside for Dynasty, because I think there's two sides to the coin with Kenny Pickett here. First, you look at the fantasy scoring, the fantasy production. Even in a super flex league, maybe you get like 12 to 16 points out of Kenny Pickett, right? And that would be considered a solid day for Kenny Pickett. Like in a super flex league, you're going to be able to replace that kind of production with a mid-range,
frankly, you can pick it up just from a waiver wire quarterback like Taylor Heineke comes in for the Falcons and probably going to give you more upside.
And that's the thing. The other side of the Kenny Pickett coin, because like from an upside perspective, I think we all know the answer here. Kenny Pickett is not a desirable fantasy quarterback. The biggest question is, how much do you value loyalty from an organization? Because I still have questions about whether or not this team is actually going to move on from Kenny Pickett. I know, like, he's quote unquote benched for the time being, but there's still, I think, a little bit of conjecture that, like, because of circumstances surrounding his injury, maybe like they're like, well, he's not 100% healthy.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
There's some additional context there that makes the quote unquote benching less permanent and feel less permanent. And, should they need to backtrack it a little bit, I think Mike Tomlin has enough leeway there to backtrack whatever he needs to backtrack.
Well, like a perfect example, if Mason Rudolph has a really bad first half against Seattle, I got a feeling that Kenny Pickett's ankle is suddenly going to be a lot healthier by the time the second half rolls around.
And Kenny Pickett, he came out himself, I think it was Wednesday, said he feels like he could play. And I believe him. And Kenny Pickett, tough quarterback. He has been like banged up, had several injuries this year, and he's continued to rally through them. probably sometimes to the detriment of the team. Like he wants to be out there playing with his guys, and I get it. But let's say, Mason Rudolph comes out, he doesn't look good against a defense that isn't the Cincinnati Bengals. That probably gives Kenny Pickett a little bit more leeway to heading into the 2024 season. So the question is, how much do you value just the fact that he could be the franchise guy for the organization, even if he's not productive for fantasy? How much do you value a body versus upside in your dynasty leagues? Because I know my answer. I want to hear yours.
I mean, I do value loyalty, and I'm with you. If I had to put the odds on Kenny Pickett starting as like the week 1 starter in 2024, I would say like 90-10. Like unless a Justin Fields or Kyler Murray falls into their lap. Now, I do think that the Steelers are going to go out and get somebody else. Maybe they are a landing spot for Russell Wilson, and you bring Russ in and you let those two guys compete. I know that sounds exciting for you. I also think they're going to make a coordinator change, and I wouldn't be surprised if ownership puts an offensive coordinator in place that's not Mike Tomlin's choice, whether it's maybe Eric Bieniemy, if he leaves Washington, maybe it's Kellen Moore, who is likely going to be out with the Chargers. I think that's likely, and maybe those guys can make Kenny a little bit more valuable, but I guess I don't mind the price right now, Kate, because on Dynasty League football, he's being drafted as quarterback 28. And I know the production has not been good. What do we have? 13 career touchdowns. Is that where we're at right now? 13 career passing touchdowns.
It ain't good, Marcus. It ain't good.
It's just, I think you're still going to get a starting quarterback for basically free. And that's intriguing for me in my super flex leagues.
And he should be free. Like,
I mean, he basically is.
Let's be clear. Like that, there's a reason he's free. Now, I do wonder if they bring in, a new offensive coordinator, they install a new playbook. How much does that lengthen the leash for Kenny Pickett, right? Because if he comes out, he flops with a new OC, then you come back in year 4 and you say, well, we need to give him one more year because it was his first year with a new OC. He needed time to adjust with a new playbook and all that. So like the leash, I feel like there are a million ways that I could envision this leash for Kenny Pickett getting longer and longer.
Look at the record. Mike Tomlin always says, "Hey, Kenny and I are judged by wins and not stats." And listen, that's a really flawed way to base your quarterback ranking. But their record when Kenny Pickett starts and finishes games is very good. Now, again, that's very flawed because in some of the blowouts, like in the Texan game, the Jaguars game, they just kind of pull them out later in those games. But I could see Mike Tomlin going to ownership and being like, "Hey, whenever Kenny's healthy, we are we're a really good team." I don't buy that, but I think that's ultimately what's going to happen here.
But the reason for that is not the fact that Kenny is winning the games for him. It's that he's not losing the games for him. Correct. And that's not the way that I play Dynasty, Marcus. No. So that's why I'm out on Kenny Pickett. So if we were in a Dynasty league together, which we are, but we share a team, so that doesn't really count, I would be the first. First of all, I would never have Kenny Pickett on my team anyway. For any longtime listeners here of Locked On Dynasty, you've known my feelings for Kenny Pickett pretty objectively here. But Marcus, if I ever had one scrap of a Kenny Pickett share on my Dynasty team, you would be the first guy I'm calling because you are a sucker, my friend.
I might be. We'll always have that 2023 preseason to remember Kenny Pickett by. What a time to be alive. Let's talk about another quarterback who's been benched this week for a veteran, Sam Howell with the Washington Commanders. We will get to him next. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. It is the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS because it's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, all you have to do is pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. PrizePicks is the most fun that I've had playing DFS because there are so many different players and so many different stat projections to choose from. It's absolutely ridiculous. Plus, PrizePicks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play, even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. PrizePicks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. So go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty podcast. We want to let you know that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Okay, let's talk about Sam Howell, who has been benched in each of the last 2 weeks for Jacoby Brissett. He's officially been benched for Brissett for the final 2 games of the season. Sam Howell started the year off really, really well. He was climbing his way up to being a top 16, 17 dynasty quarterback. I got a feeling that's going to fall off quite a bit now. But are you holding out hope that Sam Howell can be a dynasty relevant player?
Here's the thing. I'm going to take Sam Howell over a guy like Kenny Pickett 10 times out of 10. Now, like, let's be clear. His season for fantasy was obviously much better than his season was on the field. Like, there was, a stint in the first half of the season where Sam Howell was a top 7 fantasy quarterback. And, volume had a lot to do with it. There was a lot of garbage time involved. But Marcus, like, let's be clear. This team has been kind of a failed experiment from the beginning. This defense has struggled from the beginning, right? Like, Sam Howell was, I think, always kind of in the spot where, in the second half, he's racking up a bunch of garbage time stats because the defense gave up a ton. There was never, I feel like, a great runway for Sam Howell to play a ton of just, you know, pace for pace football. And instead it was a lot of catch up and a lot of ugly. But let's be clear, like, you look at Sam Howell, he has, 20 passing touchdowns and 18 interceptions over the course of his career. Leads this entire class in big time throw rate per PFF. Of course, that also has come at the risk of turnovers. But you look at the personnel there, there are a lot of things to like about Sam Howell and his situation, but I do have my concerns just given the draft capital, a 5th round pick, given the fact that this is, a new ownership staff. This is probably going to be, I can't imagine a world that Ron Rivera comes back as the head coach. I think there's, a world where with the right coaching staff, Sam Howell could be a really good quarterback. And I'm going to hold on to that. But I have to warn everybody listening that the chances of him getting that shot based on his draft capital and based on the likelihood of a new organization or a new coaching staff coming in that's going to want to coach their guys and build their team, it feels like it could be over for Sam Howell. Maybe that's just the case in Washington. Maybe he gets another opportunity with another organization. We'll see.
I'm kind of with you. The draft capital, unfortunately, does matter a lot. We've seen if you are a top 5 pick, you're just going to get chance after chance after chance, and maybe eventually something will work out. Like a perfect example is Baker Mayfield, right?
Mm-hmm.
He was the number 1 overall pick, a couple good years in Cleveland, went to Carolina, got traded to Carolina, got cut, went to the Rams, then went to Tampa Bay on a really cheap contract, and now I think he's going to get rewarded. Another example is Sam Darnold, flamed out with the Jets, but the Jets were still able to get multiple day 2 picks for Sam Darnold because of the draft capital. Trey Lance had, was it 3 starts for Trey Lance in San Francisco? And they still got a 4th round pick from him for the Cowboys. When you're a 5th round pick, I just don't see, he's not going to go anywhere next year, Kate. where he's going to be able to be like a day one starter. Like it's just not going to happen. And probably the most likely thing to happen is he's just going to be the backup in Washington to Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jalen Daniels, like somebody like that who they draft, or maybe they go out and sign Justin Fields or they trade for Kyler Murray. I think you're going to have to really wait here on Sam Howell. You're going to have to wait a long time, and maybe that's just not worth it if you're in a shorter bench league.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. Now, if the season were to end today, here heading into week 17, the Washington Commanders would have the number 3 overall pick. So that puts them in a prime spot to get one of these top quarterback prospects. And I would, seriously have some trouble envisioning them passing up on that opportunity. Now, you brought up an interesting name, and this is I think a perfect example of maybe where we're at in dynasty rankings. Sam Howell heading into the month of December. Now we said obviously this is probably going to change. Quarterback 17 in dynasty league startup ADP. Now Baker Mayfield entered the month at quarterback 25. Who would you prefer? Sam Howell or Baker Mayfield? And how quickly things can change. And
the reason why is I think after this year, Baker's going to be given endless opportunities as much as he wants. I think he's going to get a nice contract from Tampa Bay. If he doesn't get a contract from Tampa Bay, there's going to be 5 or 6 other teams that are beating down his door to come be a competent starter. I just wonder with Hal, could he just be buried on the bench for the next 2 years and then just kind of forgot about until injuries happen? I just think that's way more likely. I think Baker, we know, is at least going to be a day one starter for the next 2 years at worst.
Yeah. And just to be clear, Baker Mayfield, way more upside than Kenny Pickett.
Agree with you there. So I should have mentioned at the top of the show, Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, is the clear-cut number 1 quarterback from the 2022 class. And then it's just a mess after that. And you mentioned and you referenced the ADP, Sam Howell at QB 17. That's going to fall. We saw Kenny Pickett at this time last year. His ADP was right around QB 20. He's down to QB 28. But there's also some other quarterbacks, Kate, that are still inside that top 30-ish range that I want to mention because they were starters at one point or they're starting now. We will get to the rest of this class next. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to have as many top-tier candidates as possible to interview. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. Hiring is easy when you have this many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or the resources to hire. Thankfully, with LinkedIn, the process is so quick and easy. They've even just launched a feature that helps you write your job descriptions, making the process even quicker. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That is linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty podcast. We want to let you know that on tomorrow's show, we're going to break down all of the action from our final Thursday night football game of the year. Can't believe that we're already at that stage of the season. Any relevant takeaways from Jets Browns, we will have it here. Plus, promotion commotion. We are in the championship window in your dynasty leagues. We're going to tell you some players that you need to promote from your bench into your starting lineups to help you win your dynasty championships. But Kate, I want to go through just a couple more quarterbacks from that 2022 class to kind of assess their value. And let's start with Bailey Zappe, who got the starting job in New England a few weeks ago, had a really nice performance against Pittsburgh, played pretty well against Denver on Christmas Eve. Does Bailey Zappe have any dynasty value to you, or is this just a kind of, let's see what he looks like in New England for the final couple games of the year?
I honestly, I think that this is a placeholder move. The New England Patriots are in place for the number 4 overall pick in the 2024 draft. I do think that much like Washington, they are absolutely going to be in the market for their franchise guy. I think, obviously they kind of broke Mac Jones a little bit. I think we can say the Mac Jones experiment is over. Why not see what you have in Bailey Zappi when you already know exactly what you have out of, Mac Jones? Like I kind of get it. You know what's funny though, Marcus? So looking at this 2022 quarterback class, you know who Bailey Zappi actually comps pretty closely with in terms of his statistical production this year? It's Kenny Pickett. And again, we already just talked about like the Kenny Pickett, who's a what's it like. I don't think there's a ton of upside here. Bailey Zappi actually, like, you look at the stats. I wish I could throw them all up on a board for y'all, but just 0.1 yards per attempt less than Kenny Pickett. He has 6 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. So does Kenny Pickett. And just
With
to
worse
note, Bailey
receivers, right?
Zappi with worse receivers, and Bailey Zappi has played 4 fewer games. Let that sink in. Average depth of target, literally just right on par. We see Bailey Zappi has a higher adjusted completion percentage per PFF, higher NFL passer rating this season per PFF, higher big time throw rate per PFF. Like this across the board, actually, Bailey Zappi might have had the statistically better season than Kenny Pickett, which I think tells you literally everything you need to know. Bailey Zappi is a placeholder, and I don't think he's anything more at this point. Sorry.
I think he's a high-end backup, and I think New England's going to draft a quarterback this year. Or I'm not putting them past going out and signing Justin Fields or trading for Kyler Murray or doing something like that. But I do think Bailey Zappi is a high-end backup, but I don't think he's somebody that I'm going out and trading for. I don't think he's somebody that's worth rostering, because even when he plays, you're only getting low-end QB2 production because there's no rushing ability. He's not throwing for a ton of yards or anything like that. So I'm good there. But it's funny, Brock Purdy and Bailey Zappi are the only starters right now from that 2022 class, because we should mention another quarterback that got benched, Desmond Ridder, who's been benched now twice this season. He was being drafted, as QB 29 in dynasty leagues going into the month of December. And I think of all of these quarterbacks, he's probably the one that I'm at least somewhat intrigued by, because he does have some athleticism. We did see him move around, and I just wonder, like, getting him out of that Arthur Smith offense, maybe he could have some long-term dynasty value. Maybe.
And just to be clear, Desmond Ridder was one of my favorite quarterbacks in this class, especially from a fantasy perspective. I really like Sam Howell. I really like Desmond Ridder. I think Desmond Ridder is generally a pretty smart quarterback. You mentioned some of that athleticism. He's got a ton of speed. We saw some of that on display, utilizing that around the red zone, had a couple rushing touchdowns. Like that, it kind of all came to fruition. Now, like from a just overall accuracy standpoint, you haven't loved what you've seen from Desmond Ridder. Out of this entire class, has the lowest adjusted completion percentage this season here in 2023. And that's been the problem. But also, man, you look at the quality of weapons around him. If they do get in a position where, they get a new coaching staff in there and someone that maybe can scheme up this offense a little bit more creatively, Desmond Ridder could have something. He's a 3rd round pick. So he does have a little bit more of that draft capital than Sam Howell, Bailey Zappi. He was the 2nd quarterback drafted in this class. So I
also wouldn't be surprised if Arthur Smith just goes back to Desmond Ridder next week, because nobody knows what that guy is thinking.
Because why not? So Marcus, can you do me a favor?
Sure.
Re-rank these quarterbacks for fantasy.
All right. So it's Brock Purdy, massive gap.
The size of Texas. That's
the size of Texas. Kenny Pickett, Desmond Ridder, Sam Howell.
Okay.
I don't feel great about any of the names outside of Brock Purdy, but I Pittsburgh is just so stubborn that I can honestly see them just being like, hey, we need to get a better offensive coordinator. Let's give Kenny another shot in year 3. And Kate, I think there's a really good chance that all of the other quarterbacks that we named, Bailey Zappe, Desmond Ridder, Sam Howell, Malik Willis, Skylar Thompson, that none of those guys are starting outside of Sam Howell. And therefore, Sam Howell at least has the most dynasty value because, or sorry, Kenny Pickett has the most dynasty value because he's the only one
just because,
actually playing.
just by virtue of having a pulse, this man.
Because he's going to be on the field. I agree with you. I don't believe that he has the upside of any of these other quarterbacks, but I just think he's far more likely to start in 2024 than all the other guys combined.
Fair.
That's correct. One last thing before we go. If you're like in the deepest of dynasty leagues, I'm in a 60-man roster dynasty league, which is stupid. Would you rather have Skylar Thompson, the backup for Miami, or Malik Willis?
Skylar Thompson.
Yeah, I kind of agree, right? Just because of that offense.
Yeah.
And he started a playoff game last year for Miami.
Yeah. You know what? Hey, in the preseason, we
lit it up.
saw, yeah, he absolutely lit it up. But Marcus, the answer is probably neither. I'm sorry to say, but hey, some of these leagues, you got to do what you got to do.
The moral of the story is if you think it's a really bad quarterback class, it doesn't mean you could just avoid it altogether. And that's what a lot of people did in the 2022 class. They just said, hey, none of these quarterbacks.
That's what the NFL did.
It's what the NFL did. Look, they've been right. I mean, outside of Brock Purdy, which that's a whole different conversation. They've been right. This quarterback class stunk. It's stunk for fantasy. These guys are all getting benched because they're not producing. Don't talk yourself into a quarterback just to talk yourself into one, because clearly the NFL agrees with all of us. That is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty your first listen every single day. Again, on tomorrow's show, we're going to be breaking down Jets Browns. Make sure you tune in for that. Go check out our show on YouTube. We post videos every single day over there. Go follow the podcast on any of your podcast platforms. We are free and available everywhere. Go follow Kate on Twitter at Kate Majuk. Go check her out at Behind the Steel Curtain and Pro Football Focus. I'm at Marcus _Mosher, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.